Hey everybody, this is Greg Ryder, and I'm the CEO of Angel Investors Network, and today I got a pretty cool hangout going on. I was at a mastermind in San Diego, and I got to talking to a guy named Michael, and he started blowing me away with some stuff about Bitcoin, and I've been hearing about it, and I remember being asked to invest in it years ago when it first started. I'm not even sure exactly when it started, but I remember thinking to myself, there is no way in God's green earth that this is ever going to get a foothold, and the governments and the big brothers and everything like that are even going to let it even take hold. So it's like I stayed away from it with like a 10-foot pole. But as we know, anybody who's been paying attention to it, it's mainstream, it's going mainstream. There's even bigger, better things on the horizon. So I got a cool hangout. We're going to talk about that kind of stuff today as an alternative investment. For those of you who are new to Angel Investors Network, you're seeing us for the first time, here's the best way to describe what we do. If you ever watch Shark Tank TV show and you see the sharks up there investing in entrepreneurs, that's what we do, right? We like to help entrepreneurs, and we like to be that seed capital. We like the big hits. We like to roll the dice, make the big hits, and that could be one of those things right here. We also like alternative investments with cash flow, revenue participation notes, anything that can make us money. So we're going to get right into it. We're running a little bit behind because of technology, but I got Michael on with us and Max on with us. Hey, Michael and Max, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having us.
Hey, Greg.
So, Michael, why don't you talk a little bit about how we met and kind of lay a little groundwork for what we're going to talk about today? Because you guys got all the knowledge. I'm here to listen and learn.
Well, you know, this is it's a long story full of lots of twists and turns and all sorts of stuff like that. But you know, I got involved in Bitcoin probably March of 2013 because of this guy, and I think he's on the left of me right now. But if not, this guy. You know, Max here basically had talked to me a little bit about Bitcoin at a mastermind while we were out in St. Martin, out in the Caribbean, and I'd heard about it a few months before from some friends of mine that are kind of tech nerds, stuff like that, and they had been talking about this kind of cool money that people were using and all that stuff, and I kind of didn't pay any attention, but when Max and I had talked about it, I paid a lot more attention. And long story short, we pretty much got together and started doing some stuff together in the Bitcoin industry. So we started doing some informational products and a lot of other stuff leading up until now. Now we kind of go out there, talk to businesses about implementing Bitcoin as a payment solution, going out there as well as helping facilitate not just Bitcoin but other types of cryptocurrencies. There's right now at count, there's about almost 550 different cryptocurrencies that are listed with some sort of a market cap over $10,000 or more. Several of them over $10 million mark right now. So there's a lot of room out there besides just Bitcoin. We'll probably talk a little bit about all of these subjects here shortly. So that's kind of how I got involved, and I'll let Max kind of tell you guys, you know, where he's coming from on the whole Bitcoin thing and cryptos.
Sure, thank you, Michael. Well, I mean, I came from the, I'm a gold and silver bug, and so I came from the precious metals world. And actually, the only reason I was listened to a friend of mine tell me about Bitcoin was just so that I could save him from the headache and hassle and losses that were sure to follow with this crazy magic internet money. And so I sat down and listened to it all ready to pounce on him and tell him all the reasons why it wasn't going to work. And basically, he had answers to address every single one of my concerns. And I've got a lot of history and education in the gold and silver and fiat money and fractional reserve banking and how the monetary system of the world works. And so when he was able to satisfy so many of those criteria, I saw that we had something which was just unlike anything else, and very much a potential to be a complete shift in paradigm for the world of money. And you know, every now and again you'll see these like massive disruptive technologies where things just change the way we live. And the internet was a great example of that. And I think we've never really had a disruption in, well, except when you go back to, I guess, the Federal Reserve and fractional reserve banking, but these are centuries old. This was something where I saw the free market was coming in to be a disruptive technology in the world of money. And you know, money is 1/2 of every transaction on the planet. And so when you think about that, there's no area or industry where it could possibly be more impactful in society. It's almost hard to imagine how there could be something that is different to, like, even bigger and more powerful than the internet. But with regards to a disruptive technology in the world of money, then that actually will be more powerful and more profound and change our lives in even more ways than we can possibly imagine if there is a disruptive technology in that takes hold and goes and goes to the masses. And so I started looking at Bitcoin, and it kind of blew me away in that it solves so many of the problems. It's a money designed for the internet, and so it's just going to be way more efficient. When you think about making making payments on the internet with regards to a credit card, you couldn't come up with a system more archaic and more ridiculous than what we have right now. It's so bad. Every different country has a different system, and when I'm in Europe and I try and pay with a credit card, they ask me for some PIN number. I don't even have a PIN number on my credit card. I don't know what they're talking about. But in Europe, that's standard. So when I'm buying something with a European website, my credit cards often don't work. And all these different countries, all these different things, tremendous opportunities for fraud, tremendous opportunities for just wholesale hacking of hundreds of millions of people's email addresses. And we've seen that with Target and thing recently. So there's so many problems with using credit cards for payments online, which is the primary payment method today. And so when I saw Bitcoin come along and it had its fundamentals were sound, I thought this has a real opportunity. But I thought, okay, even if this is better, so what? It doesn't really matter. There are very powerful, and I might throw on my libertarian hat here. There are very powerful incumbents. Visa, MasterCard, banking systems. These guys are entrenched and they're partners with governments. And I thought, how are we going to find for something to be new enough and good enough and better? That's not necessarily enough, right? What we also need to know is that it can work even if governments are against it. And so that was my next level of due diligence. Does Bitcoin have the infrastructure and stability and the defense mechanisms to resist any kind of attacks from it? And that was actually one of Bitcoin's best features. It's incredibly robust against any kind of an attack, be that from a competitor, be that from a government, be that from whatever. And so that was kind of the start of my whole journey. And now I'm 2 years into it. I've seen the price of Bitcoin go ballistic, which after about 2 months of research, I thought, okay, I've satisfied all my conditions. I started recommending this to my paid subscribers. And I was advising them to buy when Bitcoin was $12. Now Bitcoin's over $300, and it's been a fantastic and wild ride. But that's kind of the beginning of my journey into the Bitcoin world.
No, that's amazing. So you took it to the next level than I did, because I just blew it off. I didn't decide to put any time into it. But you said something I want to kind of comment on, and then I'll ask you guys a little bit more. So when people talk to me about currencies and the currency of the world and currency trading, and I'm a past investment banker and that kind of stuff, I always tell people the #1 currency on planet Earth is oil. Always has been, and I've always said it always will be. And just listening to you right now, for the first time, I thought maybe I was wrong, right? Because oil is that currency that global markets trade in, and everything revolves around, especially in the financial markets. I mean, you have gold and silver, obviously, that kind of stuff, and our actual currencies. But oil is that universal currency that's traded in. That's where the big money is. But now we got something else coming along, so it's pretty fascinating. So pretty cool stuff. So where do we want to take it from here? Where do we go from an investor standpoint as far as looking at it from an investing standpoint, and what are the pros and cons, and what do we do next?
Well, perhaps we could start with an analogy, and it's a way to kind of think of all of these things, because Bitcoin is the first, it's the most powerful, has tremendous network effects, it's got a tremendous foothold, but there are also lots of other types of companies out there, and lots of other, we call them crypto coins, cryptocurrencies. They're so unique, and so you have to draw on analogies from other areas of life. Nothing fits perfectly, but when you're trying to demonstrate a particular aspect of it, you might draw on an analogy. So I'll start with drawing on an analogy. And from an investor perspective, I would consider these companies as unmanned. I would consider these coins like Bitcoin as unmanned companies. They have shareholders, they have profits, they have revenues, they have customers, they have a product. And when you start to look at them with that perspective, you start to get a very useful analogy to understand them from the perspective of an investor. So this is kind of a real paradigm shift, this concept of an unmanned company. It's basically where the business plan and the product delivery is contained in software, and the whole thing just lives in the cloud. And you can be a shareholder of that business, and you can participate in growing that business, and you can be a customer of that business, you can pay fees to that business. And it's just this kind of weird esoteric company that lives in the cloud. And so start off with that analogy, and let's bring that analogy to Bitcoin and introduce who all the players are. So I would suggest that if you buy Bitcoin, what you're doing is you are buying a share or buying stock for a slightly inaccurate word, but you're buying a share in this unmanned company called Bitcoin, and you are now an owner in that company. What Bitcoin's product is payments. It competes with Visa and MasterCard and Western Union and PayPal, and what it allows is for someone to send payment or value anywhere across the world instantly for nearly free. Sometimes there are small fees involved, somewhat anonymously if they take some extra steps, and without any middlemen or third parties, and without permission. And so this is really, really good for crossing borders and all sorts of things. Like, there are some unfortunate people in this world who live in somewhat of a police state, and they just can't get money in and out of their country. So this looks like one very useful example. So if you consider the product that Bitcoin offers as a payment, it's an international payment network, and you don't need to spend $500 on a point of sale machine like you do with credit card processing in order to start processing credit cards. All you do is you download a free app, and you can start accepting payments in Bitcoin. You can, and the person sending the Bitcoin, in order to send it, that's getting a little bit technical, but sometimes they pay a small fee, and sometimes they don't. And those fees are like the revenue of the Bitcoin company. Because if those fees come in, and those fees are higher than their expenses, then you could argue that Bitcoin is profitable. Now, Bitcoin also has employees. So in order to manage this whole network of international payments, Bitcoin employs people that they call miners. And these miners are out there. They're running hardware, they're running computer programs on their computers, and they're paying for bandwidth, they're paying for electricity costs, they're paying for this piece of hardware, and those employees support the whole network. And basically, those employees, it's a free-for-all. Anybody can go and start downloading the software, run the software, and support the network, and when you do that, you start getting a wage, as all employees should. And the way that Bitcoin gives them this wage is, first of all, it gives them all of the fees that come into Bitcoin, that goes straight to the miners. And then in addition to that, you might expect this in a startup company. In a startup company, a startup company might sell shares in their company to raise capital. Well, Bitcoin does a similar thing. What it does is it creates new Bitcoin, and you can liken that to creating shares in the company, because you own Bitcoin, you're a shareholder in the company as far as this analogy goes. So what Bitcoin does is it creates new shares. Every 10 minutes, it creates 25 new shares. And there's a schedule. Every 10 minutes right now, it's going to create 25. At the beginning, it used to create 50. And in about a year and a half, that's going to drop down to 12 shares. It's going to create 12 new shares every 10 minutes. And it's this decreasing scale of constantly creating new shares. And what that does is it's like it feeds the network. And so one way of considering that is you're paying the miners to secure the network by diluting the shares in the company. And that's the short-term strategy in order to get the business going. Once the business gets going, then those dilution of shares stops, and hopefully there's enough users in the ecosystem that those fees are paying the miners sufficiently that they're happy to be there and continue to secure the network. So I kind of found a lot of different concepts out there, but I think from an investor perspective, it's a really useful analogy. And so now you can go into the questions like, well, should I invest in this company? And a question to ask is, okay, well, would I invest in a company whereby this kind of business model is approached, and what's kind of going? How good is the product? Are people using the product? Is the product spreading virally? So lots of people are using it. New users are using it all the time. And the answers to those kind of questions are yes. And so now you have to think, well, if more users use this product, then kind of a weird kind of catch in this system is that in order to use the product, you have to buy shares in the business. You have to buy Bitcoin in order to send the payments back and forth, right? And so you can say, okay, well, if there's lots more people using Bitcoin, that means there's lots more people who have to go and buy shares in this unmanned company. And so I would expect, as demand for this product increases, I would expect demand for Bitcoin to increase, and therefore I would expect the value of my shares to increase as well. And so that might be a reason, well, from an investor perspective, that is the reason why someone would invest in Bitcoin. Do you have any thoughts on that, Michael?
I know there's a lot of different reasons why they would invest in it. One, just pure speculation. That's why I got involved with it. Basically, Max here gave me $20 in Bitcoin, and every day I saw it increase by 50% for almost a 7-day period. So by the time I got home, I was super excited about it, and I thought, I want to get involved. I started day trading and stuff there, and I saw a lot of opportunities at that time to do other things in there. One thing that I do and one thing that Max does is info marketing, and I saw a big need for educating people about Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies at that time. So, we developed some products in that space and everything too. But back to Bitcoin, I see there's a lot of different interesting things. Number one, as Max alluded to, I see this as being more disruptive than even the internet. I watched the internet blossom, when I was younger, and saw it going through. My son, he's 16. He doesn't even fathom a time when there was no internet. I remember, those times, and so does Max, and so does Greg. That was huge, but this is even bigger than that, I think. I mean, money's been around longer than anything, and discussing money and currency. And so going back to this, the fact that it is trustless, I don't have to trust Greg in order to do a transaction with him, and know that no matter what we agree upon during that transaction is going to take place. That's something that's very cool. The fact that it can eliminate fees, merchant processing fees, the fact that it can eliminate chargebacks, the fact that it can eliminate all that sort of mess, where companies out there like Amazon, for instance, from a speculation standpoint, if you're holding the technology that is going to enable Amazon to instantly make an extra 3% profit margin on all of their sales, that's pretty powerful, right? That's a technology that can be used for a lot of different things. They've got a 1% profit margin. They can, 200, 300% more on those transactions. So, there's people who speculate with it. There's people who think, I'm just going to go in for the long term. There's a lot of people who are just day trading it, trying to get those quick little bumps here and there, or just play the markets. And there's people who have visions long term, who are building all of this technology, Bitcoin 2.0 and 3.0 stuff, to service that market. Again, very, very similar to the internet and the network effect that you saw take place with the internet. So, and there's people that do that. There's people who put money up for, for instance, like Bitfinex, which is a website that you can do some Bitcoin trading, which is really cool. You can also basically put up money for people to go long shorts on. You can loan money and get interest back on that money. And a lot of interesting stuff there. So you see day traders, and you see people that are involved in Forex markets and day trading getting involved in there. And then you've got full-on types of day trading, almost type sites. One example of that is BitShares, which is a cryptocurrency in and of itself. It's one that's number 4 market cap in the world. It's close to $50 million market cap right now. It's been out for less than 90 days. It's a decentralized stock exchange, for lack of better words, like an asset exchange, I should say. It's decentralized. Nobody runs it. It runs itself based on the protocol that it's written on, and you can trade anything from currencies to bit oil, Greg, or bit gold, or bit silver, that are pegged to the price of real-world commodities and assets and currencies. And you can cross-trade these things in less than 5 seconds at a time. So there's people in the trading world that are getting involved right now with these opportunities to have a trading console that's open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, on any type of asset or commodity or currency that you want to, that is on any computer that you have, that is tied directly cryptologically to a wallet that you own, that nobody can get into. A government can't get into it, a bank can't get into it, nobody can seize your money, nobody can do anything. You have this trading console, and you can trade across assets like, if you think gold's going to be going up, jump over into gold, take a 5 or 10% bump, then move it back over into something stable like BitUSD, which is the bit dollar, which is pegged to the price of the dollar during those times when you see a downturn on the assets that you like. Or take advantage of all these other assets that you see could potentially be going up as well. There's a lot of really, really interesting things that are coming out of this. It's called blockchain technology. That's what Bitcoin was built on. The blockchain technology. Once Bitcoin was created, the blockchain technology was out there to the world. Open source technology allows people to build these entire platforms and businesses on this particular type of technology. And BitShares is a great example of going beyond Bitcoin to a whole different realm of trading, stocks, assets in general, again, commodities, options, currencies, all in one spot, where you can park all of your money in there and move it around. You can see what your total portfolio is worth at any given time. And now they're developing off-ramps where you can spend this money in the real world in fiat currency at the gas station to fill up your gas tank, for instance, right?
Man, let me. This is like boom. It's like, it's so mind-boggling because you think about the industry altering of what you're talking about, and I had no idea. It's like I'm learning this. I'm like the fresh green guy that just doesn't have a clue, and I try to give an analogy, and you did a great job, Max, of explaining that whole stuff. For the first time, I kind of get an idea what a miner is and that kind of stuff. So that's pretty cool. But the idea that what you're talking about, it just changes everything. I mean, it's like mind-boggling, man. That's just amazing. So let me ask you a couple questions that came up during that little what you guys said there. When you talk about how many users they have as an investor, how many people are using it, how does one see how many people are using it, or how it's trending, or how viral it's going, or how fast it's growing? Because obviously it's not mainstream yet. But so how do I track the growth of it?
So, to answer that question, I'll start with another analogy. And as Michael just mentioned, the underlying technology, the technological leap that allowed what Bitcoin is called blockchain technology. And what that blockchain is basically a public ledger. And so the way it works is there's a ledger that lives out there in the cloud, and anyone can check it at any time and have access to all the details. And looking at the ledger is kind of like watching money flying around, like numbered Swiss bank accounts back in the day when they used to be private. You can see that person, account number XYZ, paid account ABC, 50 Bitcoin, and you can see that. And so this ledger is completely public. Now you don't know who owns each numbered account, but what you can see is that the money is flying around. And so this ledger is completely public, and everyone can access that. So some people have built tools on top of that ledger to make it really easy for you to go and get data exactly like that. So Michael's just put a link in there. It's coinmarketcap.com. And what that will tell you is a nice, easy place to start with. That'll tell you that that Bitcoin has a certain share price. There are a certain number of shares out there, and it can tell you the market cap. But if you go to another site, which is www.blockchain.info, that is a very, very useful website. And what it does is it gives you lots of different analysis of the blockchain. And so what you can see is every different day, some days the number of people using the product, making payments in Bitcoin is going up, and some days it's going down. But what you care about is the trend. Is the trend that more and more people are using this product every single day? That would be something useful for an investor. You can see how many wallets are being downloaded. You can see how much, what the concentration of wealth is in Bitcoin. Is there a lot of Bitcoin in one account, or is it spread out across lots of different people? You can see all these, literally hundreds of different metrics, because you have access to this public ledger of the entire Bitcoin ecosystem. And so that's really interesting. Michael, you just put up Fiat Leak. Why don't you take a moment to tell people about that?
Fiat Leak is basically a website that shows you who is buying and selling Bitcoin in real time, and you can actually see the Bitcoins flow. And it's got a globe on there, basically. You see all the countries, and it has the Bitcoins flowing to different countries, and you can see the amounts of the transactions. The cool thing about Bitcoin is that everything is available on the blockchain as a ledger. It's available, so that means that you can trace and backtrace any transaction in its entirety from the time that currency or that money was created all the way until it lands in your wallet. I could backtrace every single wallet it's ever been to and where it ever went through and what transaction took place there. And Fiat Link is a great example because it basically consolidates a lot of stuff that's going on the blockchain and puts it into like a graphical representation of seeing them flying to the U.S. and China mostly. That's where you see most of the Bitcoin action. Is basically China, 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 U.S., China, China, U.S., 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 China, pretty much the whole time. So there's a lot of cool stuff that's out there. Bitcoin, it hasn't hit the mainstream, and that's crazy considering the fact that it does more daily transactional volume than Western Union, than Discover Card, or PayPal right now. Does more daily transactional volume than those guys. And you've only got Amex, Visa, and MasterCard as payment processors really that are above that right now. Now you've got companies like BitPay, for example, who in 2013 only had maybe 10,000 merchants that had signed up by the end of the year in 2013. They already had over 100,000 by mid-year this year, and figured that they're going to be well over the 150,000, somewhere around that mark by the end of this year. Just seeing the exponential growth of people who are accepting Bitcoin and starting to accept payments in Bitcoin and taking it for the first time. And that's why I think, and I'm speculating why I'm seeing the price has been pushing it downward lately, but I really think it's because there's a lot of people who are speculating on the price and they're buying it and they're holding it, and the merchants are accepting Bitcoin and liquidating it to dollars to pay their real world bills and their fiat bills and everything like that, because there's not enough infrastructure for Bitcoin right now for people to stay in Bitcoin to pay all of their bills yet. When that happens, though, I think you're going to see Bitcoin shoot through the roof, because then people don't have to exit the system, go to fiat currency to pay their regular bills. They're not going to put all this selling pressure and pushing the market down while these other guys are sitting here speculating that the price is going to go up and they're holding it. And you're going to see a lot of that sort of stuff. So, Ryan kind of covered blockchain.info, which is kind of an aggregate of pretty much, I think that's the blockchain explorer for pretty much everything that happens on Bitcoin. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So that's pretty much every transaction that ever takes place on Bitcoin. You can go to blockchain.info and actually go and look at the public ledger for any transaction ever.
Yeah, if you have an actual transaction ID, you can go in and look at the transaction. It says that, X amount of dollars went from account X to account Y. You can look that up, and they've got lots of cool charts and everything. So it's cool.
Okay, so I got a couple questions, and I'm going to bring it around again too. So a couple things. When you and again, this is a real quick question. So when you were talking about the market cap, which is a familiar term within the investment community, is that where you can find out the market cap is on one of these sites, the blockchains with one of these cryptocurrencies? Where were you getting those numbers from, Michael?
So I threw in a link into the chat area, but it's coinmarketcap.com, and that one right now, as of right now, lists 538 cryptocurrencies and 33 crypto assets, basically things that are like the bit USD or bit oil or bit gold or bit CNY, things like that. And so you can see the market cap. You basically see the available supplies. You can see the current going price on average, and the total market cap, as well as the transactional volume, 24-hour volume of transactional play going on. So you can kind of see a few different things. And there's a lot of different cryptocurrencies that are out there. There's a lot of different people that are out there trying to start their own currency, start their own assets, start their own kind of economy. And this is, it is, isn't it?
No, it's incredible. And you think about Wall Street, and you go, okay, you go back into when the Securities Act of 33 and 34 was enacted, which was a bunch of regulations to try to help, quote unquote, protect the investors and whatnot. And then guys like me get into the market, and we do this kind of stuff, and over years and decades, these brilliant people create all the things, the derivatives and the REITs and all these different investment vehicles from a basic concept, right? And that's what you guys are describing to me here, going, okay, this basic concept of this transparent currency that can't, all these different things can't be traced, your wallet, all these different things about it, but then all these other offshoots that are being built around it. It's just fascinating, and it literally could change the world. And I remember, well, the whole China thing, I guess I don't want to get into that, because the whole China thing, I can't even imagine that China's allowing people to trade Bitcoin and be involved with Bitcoin and with a government like that, but that's a whole other discussion.
So perhaps, Greg, maybe I could just interject there with a pretty useful analogy, I think. So when small little things can grow into tremendous things, and I'll go back to the internet analogy. The internet, at its core, what it was is a very, very simple elementary protocol which allowed packets of information to go from A to B. And over the next 20 years, everything that we've seen sits on top of that protocol. And they said that there's no way that protocol could handle streaming voice. That'll never happen. And then they solved that problem. And then they said, well, there's no way that that little streaming packet protocol will be able to handle transferring video. That'll never happen. And then we solved that problem. And it's these very, very simple elementary protocols that totally change everything as entrepreneurs jump in and solve problems and build applications on top of this amazing new technology. And I think that's a very useful analogy to carry when you look at Bitcoin. Bitcoin is a very, very simple protocol that allows you to transfer value from one to A to B in a public ledger situation where everyone can see what's going on, and there's no counterfeiting, and there's no fraud going on. What can come from that over the next decade is absolutely mind-blowing and well beyond my brain power. I read about this stuff all the time, and I've read so many things about the amazing potentials and I know the entrepreneurs who are getting funding and and building new products to sit on top of this protocol. And again, to go back to that internet analogy, like, at the beginning, 1995, 1996, there was like, in order to send an email, it was like run DOS run, whatever the hell it was. It took 2 days to get there, and people were saying, well, there's no way that people are ever, there's no way your grandma's ever going to use email. It's just not going to happen. And then the entrepreneurs came in and built the systems on top of that very simple protocol and made email as simple as compose, type, send. And now your grandmother is using email. And what you're going to see is when all of these problems are solved, and I'll grant you there are many problems that need to be solved with Bitcoin, it's that new. But as entrepreneurs, and there's, just to give you another quick little interesting fact, in 1995, in that calendar year, there was $250 million worth of VC money that poured into internet startups. So far this year, we've seen $300 million pour into Bitcoin startups.
Yeah, it's close to 400 almost now at this point. Yeah.
Now, obviously, there's inflation there and whatever else, but it's like that time. Yes, using Bitcoin can be a little bit clumsy, and it's not for your grandmother yet. But once all those problems are solved, and it is for your grandmother, then it's possible that it could be the most tremendous investment of all time. Because you couldn't invest in TCP/IP, that protocol that sent packets back and forth. You couldn't invest in that. But Bitcoin's a little bit different, and you can invest in Bitcoin as a protocol. And what can happen over the next 10 years as entrepreneurs solve all those problems and build things on top of the Bitcoin protocol could be absolutely life-changing. And financially for those investors could be life-changing as well.
No, to me it sounds like it is, and you think about that and you go, what's the market cap of the market, the New York Stock Exchange, right? It's trillions of dollars, and it's like you got something that's in its infancy, and I wonder what happens to the dollar at some point and that kind of stuff as this stuff starts to grow. It's just mind-boggling because it's and the fact that it's doing more volume than PayPal and whatnot, and it's not mainstream, it's amazing. So let me guys ask you a couple questions. So when it comes to mainstream, I have heard, and I really didn't, because I didn't have the interest, I didn't really read it that deep, but I've heard of some pretty dang big brands that do accept Bitcoin, and so I want you to kind of talk about that for a little bit, and then I want to come back to, I just had an idea, I want to come back to this, but what about using Bitcoin? You said VC money is going into companies that are Bitcoin related or cryptocurrency related, but what about I'm an apparel company and I want to get funded with Bitcoin to hire my employees and to run my business? That's a whole other thing. Let's come back to that in a second. But talk to me about the brands and the size of the companies and who has adopted this that really has been giving it the credibility in the last 6 months to a year.
You want to take that, Mike?
There's a couple of things, and you can throw on anything that I missed, but I mean, we've got companies like Dish, we've got companies like Tiger Direct, we've got eBay, we've got PayPal actually accepting cryptocurrencies, not just Bitcoin, but several of them now. You've got Expedia.com, you've got Virgin, you've got Tesla, all of these smart companies. Yeah, Overstock, which is one of the first ones that really started in January, and they had initially thought, hey, our total sales for the year might be about $5 million worth of Bitcoin sales, and within the first 60 days they revised that to about 15 million, maybe even more. They also saw that on average people were spending about $80 to $90 more per order on any Bitcoin related transactions, and they brought in over 4,000 brand new customers who had never spent a single dime or penny with their company ever before within that first 60 days as well. Wow. So you've got these big brands of super, super smart people, right? I mean, Elon Musk, we've got for PayPal and Tesla. You got Sir Richard Branson for Virgin. You've got all of these guys out there who have been ahead of the curve forever, right? And have built some of these major technologies that are out there that we're using every single day and that millions of people every day use, and they're putting their buck on this for a reason, right? So you got Dish Network, who's basically saying, part of the reason why we're accepting Bitcoin is because it protects a user's security and the data from users. See, in a Bitcoin transaction, you don't have to have multiple fields and enter in your credit card information and your CV number and this and that and everything else. You don't have to enter that stuff in. You can just put in maybe one field. Actually, you can do one-click purchases with Bitcoin. This requires a company like Dish, for instance, stated that part of the reason why they implemented Bitcoin being accepted was that they could protect customer data easier, because instead of having to store all this data in these servers and then have to protect it from hackers, ask JP Morgan Chase and Home Depot how that's worked out for them so far, right? Instead of having to protect that data, they don't have to, because they're not storing any customer data. So from a security standpoint, they're able to protect their customers better and spend less money doing it, and that's a win for any company that's really out there. So, you know, eventually you're going to see more companies jumping on the bandwagon, but those are massive companies. Those are very, very large scale companies. Zynga, which is the world's video game leader, they accept Bitcoin. You've got Fiverr.com. I mentioned Expedia, but you can book your plane tickets, hotels. You've got all of these different companies that are out there just jumping onto it because I think they see the value. You basically, and I mentioned this before, you can eliminate, there are no chargebacks with Bitcoin or with cryptocurrency related transactions. So you eliminate any risk of chargeback right there. The fees are practically non-existent. You know, in some high risk industries pay 10, 15, even 20% fees for a merchant account just for somebody to swipe a card. Some of them on average we'll just say is 2 to 3%. Now, any of those transactions that you're talking about that you're taking in cryptocurrency eliminate that 2 to 3% transaction fee. That goes right onto your bottom line. So a lot of these, again, low profit margin percentage companies can then get 200, 300, 400% more profit margin out of all of those sales. You know, so there's so many benefits to a merchant to actually accept it. And I as a person who does a lot of sales online, I don't want to impede somebody with being able to spend money with me. And Bitcoin allows these unbanked masses to start doing global transactions. Everybody keeps talking about the socioeconomic changes of the internet and PayPal enabling people to do more worldwide transactions, which is absolutely true. But PayPal still is not available in a multitude of countries on this planet. There's 60 countries that are banned from doing global transactions, and that's about 6 billion people on the planet right now that are unbanked or underbanked that can't buy anything from any of us, the things that we sell, whether, you know, where the Expedia is out there or where the Overstocks or Amazon or whatever. Those people cannot buy anything from us because they don't have a bank account. You have to have a bank account to have a PayPal account, so they can't go there. They don't have a bank account, so they don't have credit cards. They don't have ACH, so they can't do any of that stuff. And Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies allows all of those people to actually be able to transact globally for the first time ever. It actually does tie the world together in a socioeconomic type of way that has been unprecedented since the dawn of time, really. These are massive things, and allowing those 6 billion more new potential customers to be able to transact with these companies. I think what these companies are seeing is, I'm saving money, and I'm serving my customers better, and I'm able to tap into a huge reservoir of customers that's not been tapped yet, right, for our kind of stuff. And Ryan, I'm sure there's some things that you want to say about some of these companies.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you've touched on another point. I wouldn't mind going off on that tangent a little bit. I actually think it's being involved in the Bitcoin world, in the cryptocurrency world, is actually the most philanthropic thing you could possibly do. I think it's going to help society and help the world in more ways than any other single active person could do. And Michael, you touched on that. Right now, you know, I think you know, in the next 12 months or so, we're expecting there to be a $25 smartphone. That is a smartphone that has internet functionality, and for $25. And what that can do for people, there is, I think, as you said, there's like 60 countries in which just, you know, credit cards will not work. Banking all over Africa, all over the third world, the very poorest people in the world are prohibited from having a 21st century financial system. They can't get involved in the banking system. Now, if they can have a $25 smartphone, they can, you know, have an eBay store. They can run a blog. They can, you know, make little widgets and, you know, cloth and textiles and the things that they're doing in the developing world. And they can put up a store, but they can't accept money. And they can send you the product because FedEx and postal services, they do work in those countries. But what they can't do is take payments. And our ability to send them money straight to the producer, the guy in that country is actually using his skills to create metalworks and woodworks and textiles and whatever it is he's doing. He instantaneously can leapfrog into a 21st century banking system with Bitcoin right now, free of charge. Download a free app on his $25 smartphone. And that is going to help just billions of people lift themselves up out of poverty over the next 2 or 3 decades. And that's why I go back to that statement. just being involved, just learning about, and just promoting Bitcoin, I think is the single most philanthropic thing you could possibly do right now, because it's going to change the world in more ways than anything else that I can see.
When I explain that to people, I totally agree with what you're saying about the philanthropic thing. Is people always ask me, like, what is your goal in life? And I said, well, it really is. There's a couple of different things. One of my major goals in life is legacy. What is my legacy? What are people going to remember me for when I'm gone? And before, it used to be, you used to rape, pillage, and murder and take over, countries, make people slaves, and they talk about you 2,000 years later. But it's a little bit harder to pull that off nowadays. And I'm not really the rape, pillage, murder type of guy. So I'm more of a, something else going on. And the biggest thing I think when it comes to cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin, and everything that's going on in this space is that you are enabling people true freedom and true sovereignty for the first time ever in world history. True freedom, true sovereignty, where nobody can get in the middle of a transaction. There can be no third party that steps in between. Max and I saying, hey, go ahead and no, I'm taxing this transaction, or no, you guys can't do that transaction. You guys can't take place. You guys can't do that. So, that's a huge thing. Allowing these people who can't bank to actually go out there and bank. Allowing these people to be able to, as you was just talking about before, produce textiles or fine goods, stuff like that. There's a story about a guy in Iran who basically got hit by a lot of the stuff going on between governments, cross-governmental stuff. Hey, we're not doing financial transactions anymore for people who are citizens in Iran. This guy sold a lot of stuff to American citizens and was not able to do transactions anymore because the banking system basically has it shut down. They can't do transactions. They can't help him. He can accept Bitcoin. He started his Bitcoin account, opened up his wallet, and was able to start selling his stuff back again on eBay and Etsy and some of those places. So it exactly what he just said, where people are able to lift themselves out of poverty and be able to process transactions, and actually Greg can now buy something from this guy in Iran. In the next 5 to 10 seconds, you can do the transaction. He can get the money. It's verified, and he can send you that stuff because FedEx and UPS are in those countries. It's a huge thing.
No, it's just fascinating, and you can tell that we're all free enterprise capitalist freaks, right? It's like it's all about that, right? So we only got about 10 minutes here left here. So here's what I want to do. So you guys don't know this about me, but when I was 21 years old, I ended up buying the firm I worked for, and I became the youngest owner of an investment banking firm in the history of the country. That was my first big claim to fame, and it really was my biggest mistake in life. But I do have one vivid memory. When I was sitting in that chair, and we were raising money for entrepreneurs, they'd come in like a revolving door, and we were doing anywhere from maybe $500,000 a week and sometimes $5 million a week for some entrepreneur. Like, we were just raising money like crazy. And after years of losing money in bad investments and bad entrepreneurs, I started to smarten up, and I came up with a scenario that the first thing that I would ask people that came out of their mouth was, how much money have you put in and how much money have you raised from your friends and family? And if they said to me, oh, I would never get my friends and family to invest, their business plan hit the trash can, that was like, okay, you want me to get my friends and family to invest in you, but you won't get your friends and family done. And then the second question was very telltale, and I want to ask this to both of you guys and have you guys give an answer, is I would say, okay, I'm going to assume that I love your deal, right? You've made an amazing case that, it's like you guys made an amazing case that this is something that every investor should look at, right? But I would tell the entrepreneurs, tell me what's wrong with your deal. What's wrong with this deal? So from an investor standpoint, let's just assume I love it, but tell me what's wrong with it, because really that's what we need to know. That's and it's just so mind blowing to me. It's like I don't know what I don't know, so I don't even know what questions to ask or what could be wrong and where it goes. So you guys are experts in this. You tell me. So Michael, let's start with you. What's wrong with the deal?
Well, what's wrong with Bitcoin, and again, there's a lot of cryptocurrencies out there. I think the biggest problems that most of them face is the volatility problems, just what you said. I am not going to call my mother up today, tell her to close her bank accounts, take her entire net worth, and put it into Bitcoin. For the simple fact that she could wake up tomorrow and have half the spending power that she has today. It's also possible that she could have double the spending power that she has today. So, the volatility, the ups and downs can be good, can be bad. But for most Americans, most people out there, they're not speculative, right? That's not what they do, and they can't handle that kind of action. And so the volatility is a major factor. I think that's probably the biggest factor that's out there. I believe that the infrastructure and merchants and everybody will eventually catch up, and everybody will accept a cryptocurrency or Bitcoin. But it's the volatility. Now there are, and maybe this can be a follow-up question for you if you want to ask it, is what's being done about the volatility? There are companies that are out there that have been looking to solve the volatility problem to enable me to call my mom and say, take all your money out of the bank right now, because that money's not really going to be worth a lot. In fact, it's worth 5% less every year, right? As we move on, it's 5% less spending than we had the year before. So I can tell my mom now, move it over to a stable, non-volatile bit asset, and you'll be okay, and I could be able to sleep at night. Now that time is almost here. In fact, we're working with companies, Max and I both are, that are enabling this technology, enabling people to stay in these bit assets, be able to spend stuff in the real world, and not have those volatility issues, unless they choose to want to speculate. If I want to speculate and I want to go, I'll go. But right now, you can't have somebody put all their money, their net worth in there, and then expect for them to go so long as to make hundreds of billions of dollars because they got in early, when tomorrow half their spending power is down and they have to pay their real world bills today. So that's what I'd say that the biggest problem is from my standpoint. What about you, Max?
Let me comment on that, and I'll come to Max. So, what you just said, and you go back to the traditional markets, we have market makers, right? So that's what the exchanges were built for. There was all kinds of volatility in corporation. So then we had market makers who sit in the middle, and we'd risk our capital buying when the selling came in, and we'd buy. And now there's a lot of the conspiracy theorists out there that talk about, these market makers have become so powerful and have so much trillions of dollars, they can actually move markets and manipulate markets, and they let these big swings go. Like literally, I remember back when I had my brokerage firm in the 80s and the mid-90s, we used to refer to blue chip stocks, and when we referred to a blue chip stock, there was no downside risk in a blue chip stock, and we all know that is blown out of the water, and there's downside risk in anything you invest in anymore. So I think market makers. So here's one thing I do know about that. I know we don't have time to really get into what they're doing about the volatility of Bitcoin, but here's what I do know. When you have a free enterprise and capitalistic system that's built by entrepreneurs to benefit mankind and to serve people, they will figure it out, right? And like Michael just kind of alluded to, maybe it's a month away, maybe it's a year away, but there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that the brilliance of the entrepreneurial spirit and the entrepreneurial mind, and the driven by free enterprise and capitalism and by independence, really, right? By the freedom of independence, they'll figure that stuff out. So what do you got to say about it all, Max?
What I would say is that there are so many things wrong with it, and so many points for improvement for Bitcoin, is that there's not enough hours in the day to go through them all. There is lots.
Give me the top three in your opinion.
Well, let me talk about the flip side of that. Is once all those problems are solved, the opportunity is gone. Yeah. Your grandma's using Bitcoin already. The price has gone through the roof, and the opportunity is gone. So I'm like, you're going to be really, really careful. You need to assess, like each investor needs to assess that issue. And it's like, well, okay, are these problems that are going to be solved? And like exactly what you kind of just said, there is enough good stuff here that the market will solve all these problems. And with $400 million in VC money pouring into it just so far this year, there's a lot of very, very smart people with a lot of backing moving into this industry to solve those problems. And as those problems get solved, and more people start using Bitcoin, then things go up. Now, I want to raise another issue. There's also, we've talked about Bitcoin. Bitcoin is an example of a cryptocurrency. There are also many others competing, right, and trying to topple Bitcoin as the next big thing. And there are some things out there with definite points of improvement over Bitcoin. That, well, at least in my perspective, anyway. That you can also check with that's something for you to decide yourself. But I would say this. So on the one hand, you have the power of network effects. That's very, very powerful. But once there's lots of people using something, it's really kind of too hard to just change to something else. And so I'll give you a quick example of that. The keyboard we use to type, the QWERTY keyboard, it was specifically designed to slow down typers. All the vowels are on the little fingers or on not the middle row. This was designed back in typewriters when the things used to get jammed. Now we have computers. It's completely ridiculous for us to use this keyboard. But it has network effects. So many people were trained on this keyboard that we're not going to change it anytime soon, even though we could move to a better layout of keys on the keyboard. Bitcoin is in a very, very powerful position. It has established tremendous network effect. I think that present estimation there are about 5 million people in the world who own Bitcoin and are using Bitcoin in their lives. And for someone to come along and topple that, they would have to be, I think, a really, really huge leap over and above the values, over and above what Bitcoin already is. And so, like I said, Michael and I are working with a company called BitShares, and we think that's it's a tremendous improvement in the cryptocurrency world. And it's a really interesting thing. Is it going to be a big enough improvement to topple Bitcoin, as you know, and replace and overcome those network effects that Bitcoin has? It's a really interesting question. I don't know the answer. Time will tell. But that's the kind of things that when you get into this space that you're going to have to start to look at. It's like, okay, there's some interesting technologies here. This one's solved this problem. This one's got network effects. Which one's going to be? And and I think there's a room for many of them, by the way. But these are the kinds of questions that we have to answer, and all of them have different pros and cons. All the different cryptocurrencies have different pros and cons. So something for investors to consider. But let me sum up by saying I don't know which one's going to win, but I am very, very confident that the world of cryptocurrency is going to absolutely be prolific and a part of our everyday lives in the next 5, 10, 20 years. And what form that takes, time will tell. But as investors, that's our job to decide where we're going to invest our capital.
No, well said, well said. Well, we've been going about an hour, so I want to wrap things up. I sure appreciate it. I know your guys' time is valuable, and man, I just love it. And I'm going to probably have to get back with you on the phone and get some updates. Maybe we have to do this regularly. I just think it's fascinating. This is just such an intense subject. And here's one thing that I just thought about. So I have a number of investments in my investment portfolio in the early stage startup companies, and I'm going to immediately pick up the phone. And remember, Michael, you had told me this when we first met. And again, it's like, you got to get that education. It's like, fear overrides everything else. So until you get educated about something, fear's going to, keep you shackled from doing anything. So now it's like my knowledge base has increased, my fear's gone away. I've got to go take some of the companies that I've invested in, and I got to go tell them, look, no matter what you do, go figure out a way to accept Bitcoin, right? So if they can accept Bitcoin, now whether that increases their business 2% or 3% or whatever, it's going to increase their business and give them additional clients. When you were talking about that one company getting 4,000 new clients, I'm like, wow, that the lights go off. Going, you're right. You, as a startup company, and every investor watching this, you've got investments that you've made. Go back to your entrepreneurs and tell them, hey, consider taking and accepting Bitcoin, and you're going to open yourself up to a whole nother market of entrepreneurs. Or right. Not entrepreneurs, but buyers and sellers. So let's go ahead, and if you got any last word, Michael, go ahead and give us our last word, and then we'll wrap it up.
Well, and then the big thing is just what you said. Education is key on this subject. What I've found is that a majority of people out there that are either vehemently opposed to Bitcoin or just really, really loud about their opinion negatively towards it, almost always have a skewed view based on misinformation or based on things that they heard tidbits of, or there was definitely a lot of misinformation in 2013 and even in 2014 from the mainstream media talking about it, things about it being super anonymous and money laundering and all this stuff, and it just really it cast it into a bad light when in fact Bitcoin's perfect for forensic accounting, and you can trace transactions better than you ever could with a dollar, and there's so many different nefarious activities that take place with the US dollar every single day, way more than ever with Bitcoin. So just learning and understanding and getting to understand a little bit more, getting to understand how the system works, the fact that Bitcoin is a payment network and it's a currency, it's a unit of currency on that network, so it's actually two different things. Getting to understand why it's going to be able to free people. It's not just for a bunch of people in tinfoil hats that are trying to hide their money from the government or anything like that. This is for people who are actually trying to hedge their bets a little bit against a total financial collapse of the United States dollar. If we lose the petrodollar for some reason, that could happen. If we lose reserve status, that could happen. What are you going to do? Carry around all of the gold that you have, stored in your Fort Knox in your house? No. Are you going to bury it in the dirt? Well, that's going to do you a lot of good. What if nobody wants gold because they're too busy, trying to find bullets? You never know. And so I think it's kind of a hedge against a lot of those different things. The fact that governments can't take your money, that the banks can't take your money, that it's secure, that you are a sovereign person that can be in control of your entire net worth and be able to dictate where it goes and how it's spent and things like that. As people begin to understand that, I never knew anything about any of this stuff up until Max and I had spoke in March of last year. I knew nothing about Bitcoin. I knew nothing about the financial markets. I knew nothing about day trading. I knew nothing about the Federal Reserve. I knew nothing about how any of that came to place. Even now, like I never had any idea about our monetary system, currencies, or anything. And it has been the most insane experience over the last year and a half of me learning all this stuff to the point now where, I was extremely concerned. Last year I was they do what? How is it created? And just going down that whole rabbit hole and coming back out again. And just education is really going to get people there. Education, understanding that, this has got all the telltale signs of just what happened with the internet when you see these graphs going straight up on things like the television and the car and internet, and you see Bitcoin. And, it's the exact same thing. Getting in on it now and understanding it, helping solve some of these problems, starting companies that help solve some of the problems that Bitcoin has, so you can make money off of this emerging technology that, frankly, I'm surprised that people still use paper money. It's an antiquated system, and it really has never been shown to work. Fractional reserve banking's never really been shown to work either throughout history. So just, the same thing over and over again. We keep throwing all of our effort at the same things, and it never seems to work out, the right way for us. So there's something new that can actually return that power back to people, allow people to do all this stuff, allow companies to do these transactions. I think everybody's goals at the end of the day are actually more aligned than they ever really would have considered them to be until they start getting that education. They understand it, and they say, you know what? The consumer's goals are the same as the merchants. They want to have a lot of buying power, and the merchants want to be able to keep more of that money to spend, building their business larger. And what's wrong with that? And being able to do it in a way that limits controls and regulations in a good way for both the people that are using it and the merchants that are accepting it. So, we could talk definitely a lot more about this. I have a feeling from this conversation that you're going to have a lot of questions and interest in this. So that's my piece, though. Go ahead.
I was going to say, and Greg, I might just want to offer your listeners an extra resource there. So on my YouTube channel, I've got a lot of free videos there talking about Bitcoin. So this is youtube.com/successcouncil. And it's a really good resource to finding out a lot about Bitcoin. I've got a lot of updates there, so you find out the latest stuff as well. So.
Yeah, very cool. Michael, do you have a site or anything that you want to share with anyone to get a hold of you or track you down?
You could Google me. I'm like number 2 or 3 in the world for coolest guy in America. But no, which is true actually. But you guys can find me just about anywhere. You can just Google me, Michael X or Michael Taggart. Greg obviously knows me. You can also find me, Michael, at adventuremarketing.com. I do a lot of stuff, with Bitcoin mining. I'm doing stuff with info marketing products. We have Bitcoin trading software that does the actual trades for you on the open exchanges. Doing a lot of stuff in there, So find me. Go check out the videos over on Max's page for Success Council. He definitely does a lot in keeping people informed on up-to-date news, market swings, or these guys made this announcement. Overstock made an announcement recently, or any of this sort of stuff. He's got a lot of good data on there, and definitely, I'm available for conversations with anybody. Just as Greg kind of approached us a little bit about it, we've talked a lot about Bitcoin now, and I'm open to those kind of conversations to help facilitate more people accepting cryptocurrencies. So, if you want to get in touch with me, get on my schedule, we can talk.
Very cool. Well, guys, I sure appreciate it. You guys are awesome. You guys filled me up, and I just want to basically say this. So if you're an investor, you might want to go to angelnetwork.com and subscribe to our newsletter. In our newsletter, we're always bringing you great, exciting, amazing investment opportunities with better than average returns, and when done properly, with the proper education and within syndicates. I love doing the syndicate type investing. We're experiencing upwards of 75% annualized return on our money. So we want you guys to have that. Get to angelnetwork.com. Check out the YouTube channel that Max mentioned, which is youtube.com/successcouncil. Get some more education there. Appreciate it, guys. This is Greg Ryder saying, hey man, We love you. Capitalism rocks. Free enterprise was great. And make sure we keep our independence and we keep the freedom that God's given us. This is Greg Ryder signing off. You guys have a fantastic day, man.
Thanks, guys.
You guys.